Book Talk, I chose 3 young adult fantasy books that were all extremely popular when they first came out. Each of the books has a female orphan as the lead, and I chose this predominantly to entice young adolescent females into the fantasy genre because I felt that they could relate to the struggles that these females go through. The first book is The Naming by Alison Grogan. Myriad, for as long as she could remember, had been imprisoned behind walls. She was a slave in Gilman's cot, and hers was the barest of existences. Gilman's cot was a fortress designed to keep slaves in. Myriad works from sun-up till sundown, and oftentimes when the Lord has parties, she has to play her lyre until the wee hours of the morning. Freedom was a fantasy she gnawed obsessively in her few moments of leisure. Then one morning, a man appears that only she can see. She stares at him thinking he's a ghost, wondering why the other people milking the cows can't see him. He asks her if she can spare some milk, and feeling compassion, she lets him have milk and a place to sleep. Shortly after, he introduces himself as Cadvan, from the school of Lignier. There is something oddly familiar about him, but she can't quite place it. He claims he can help her escape. Should she trust him? Is out there better than in here? Will she survive and learn about her past? And why is she the only one that can see him? The Naming. The next book is Sabriel by Garth Nix. Once again, a wave of nausea overcame her, and Sabriel fell to her knees. She could feel the magistrate's hand on her shoulder, but her attention was fastened on the sack she held in her hand. She didn't need to look to know that the creature was gone. Its manifestation into the living world had ceased as its spirit had gone past the first gate. Only a pile of grave mold would remain to be swept aside in the morning. "What did you do?" asked the magistrix, as Sabriel brushed her hands through her hair, ice crystals falling from her hands onto the sack that lay in front of her knees. "It had a message for me," replied Sabriel, "so I took it." She opened the sack and reached inside. A sword hilt met her grasp, so she drew it out, still scabbard, and put it to one side. She didn't need to draw it to see the charter symbols etched along its blade. The dull emerald in the pommel and the worn bronze plated across guard were as familiar to her as the school's uninspired cutlery. It was a porcelain sword. Next, she found the leather bandolier, the belt that her father wore. "Father's instruments," whispered Sabriel, "the tools of a necromancer." "But there are charter marks engraved on the bell, and the handle," interjected the magistrix, who was looking down with fascination. "Necromancy is free magic, not governed by the charter." "Father's was different," replied Sabriel distantly, still staring at the bell she held in her hand, thinking of her father's brown-lined hands holding the bells. Binding, not raising, he was a faithful servant of the charter. "You're going to be leaving us, aren't you?" the magistrix said suddenly, as Sabriel replaced the bell and stood up, sword in one hand, bandolier in the other. "I just saw it in the reflection of the bell. You were crossing the wall." "Yes, into the old kingdom," said Sabriel with sudden realization. "Something has happened to father, but I'll find him. So I swear by the charter I bear." Sabriel.